As 2020 draws to an end, can you sum up your thoughts on the past year?
Thoughts on the past year? That's a hell of a question to start with, isn't it? And what a year it's been. Clearly COVID has been the dominating feature of 2020, certainly the latter part since March. But my memories go back to the sad loss of two of our Stirling Albion family. I lost a very close friend in Rod Turnbull, who was a club board member, and Rod and I started primary school together, day one, primary one. So I've known Rod pretty much all my life, and sadly he succumbed to cancer earlier in the year. And he's a loss not just to the football club but to me as a friend, and my thoughts go out to his family at this difficult time. And we also lost David Eccles, a long-standing serving member of the Stirling Albion coaching staff. He was first team goalkeeping coach and moved on to work with the YD for many years, and sadly and tragically Davy died in a cycling accident during the summer, and he too is a sad loss to not just Stirling Albion but the community at large. A really popular local character, school teacher in the area for many years, and again my thoughts go out to his family and friends. Also, of course, we've had the challenge of dealing with COVID, and I have to say that I think a lot of people see football as being just what happens on the pitch between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock on a Saturday, and clearly there's a lot more to it, and those challenges in dealing with the COVID protocols have really dominated the last 9 months. Just touching on football briefly at this point, I think the fact we finished on what might be described as the lowest of low notes with a 7-1 defeat at home to Cove Rangers, which turned out to be a final game of the season. I think in some ways that's actually maybe been not the worst thing that could have happened. I think we've learnt a lot of lessons from that. We've recruited well, and as people are aware, we've had a decent start to the season.
You mentioned that a football club is a lot more than just about the first team football. Could you expand on this, please?
Yeah, as I said, a lot of people just think football revolves around what happens in between the white lines on a Saturday afternoon. But there's so much more to it. As I say, we've had the challenge of dealing with the COVID protocols and delivering all that's required for that. And that isn't just about, again, the first team. It's about ensuring that training is properly monitored and managed, ensuring that we undertook our COVID testing for the Ross County game, and just in general making sure that we apply the government protocols, which isn't easy when you're dealing with a part-time football team. So on top of that, we've had the challenge of raising money. COVID has clearly brought an end to most of our revenue streams, and if it hadn't been for certain additional support through, for example, the GoFundMe, where a staggering amount was raised by our supporters, and not just our supporters, by the local community, people that recognised how important the club was to the community. We've had the James Anderson money, which was pretty much a gift from heaven, and I don't think anybody can express our thanks enough to James Anderson for his generosity. And most recently we've had the assistance of the Scottish Government grant, which has really been a godsend and has helped us considerably in closing the gap that was created by the loss of revenue across the board. I have to say also that our commercial team have been working like beavers. Our shop sales have been fantastic, partly on the back of the 75th anniversary celebrations, which leads me to talk about the 75th anniversary book that has now published and is with a lot of people for Christmas. I've been staggered by the amount of sales. We bought 500 copies, we ordered 500 copies, and we're getting close to 400 in sales, which is absolutely fantastic. Shop sales have taken off with the book. with other memorabilia for the 75th anniversary, and that and the other things that I've mentioned have helped considerably, as I say, in closing the enormous gap in our income for this year, because a lot of our expenditure has remained constant. Clearly, as a result of COVID, the challenges facing all aspects of the Stirling Albion family. Let's start with the community engagement, which unfortunately, because of all the restrictions, has pretty much had to close down for the duration. We've kept little bits and pieces going. Callum Parry, our community engagement coach, he's delivering some one-to-one sessions, which is just about as far as we can go at the moment, because they can be socially distanced, there's no contact. But if you move on to the other things such as camps and community classes, it's just been impossible, certainly to do anything indoors, and with the latest level of restrictions, we were hoping to run some Christmas camps, but it's simply proved impossible in terms of we're back to the non-contact stuff. So actually having a class or a camp that's worthwhile in terms of content, we've made the decision that we're not going to proceed with that. The youth development have kept going as best as they can. They've had a bit of a stop-start, but the coaches have done a fantastic job in keeping spirits up. They've had some games, mostly friendlies with teams in the local area because of the travel restrictions. And as I've mentioned elsewhere, we've been absolutely given the best possible kickstart in the appointment of Neil Marshall as the new head of coaching, who's just been an absolute blessing in terms of how he has galvanised everyone, and he's got various initiatives on the go in terms of healthy eating, in terms of physical awareness, and that has allowed the youth development to maintain a presence and an enthusiasm despite all the difficulties facing them. Similarly with the junior academy, I'm absolutely staggered as to how well they've managed to maintain a presence, how they've hung on to delivering classes and coaching sessions and indeed matches when it's been possible. Again, there's been travel restrictions, but I absolutely take my hat off to everybody that volunteers for Stirling Albion Football Club, especially during this last horrendous period of the restrictions imposed upon us by COVID.
So Stuart, could you talk us through the Festive Friends campaign that the club is currently running over this winter period?
Yeah, absolutely. The Festive Friends is an initiative sponsored by the SPFL Trust, and we decided we would take on 75 Festive Friends, and it's been a bit of a monumental task, but what we've been able to do is get the help and support of the NHS, the fire service, and in particular Startup Stirling, who we have a relationship with in terms of making a donation to them in return for some food that we can add to our Stirling Albion festive hamper, which has got some Stirling Albion goodies in it. And over the course of the next 2 or 3 days, including Christmas Day, we plan to get out to all 75 of our festive friends and give them not just their presents, but also a little bit of communication. Many of the people that we're visiting are isolated at the moment. They've probably been isolated for a considerable period since the advent of the pandemic, and what we'd like to do is just give them an opportunity to have a chat with someone, a friendly face, and someone from the club. So that's going to be the next 2 or 3 days, and as I say, we're absolutely indebted to the SPFL Trust for their assistance, without whom it wouldn't be possible. I'd like to kind of close this little bit with some thank yous. It's easy to take people for granted, but this last 8-9 months, and we're not through it yet, we faced a lot of challenges, and I wouldn't have been able to maintain what I've been able to do without the support of a lot of individuals and a lot of groups. I'm thankful to the fans for their support through the GoFundMe, and to our local community for their support to that initiative. to James Anderson, to the Scottish Government for their sizable grant, which has really made a huge difference, especially at this time of the year. To Active Stirling, our landlords, who we've worked very closely with. They were able to help out with training facilities at a time when school facilities were closed. We've been able to use the grass pitch to train on. Also to Stirling Council, who've been extremely helpful in getting us back up and running with training facilities in the schools, despite some of the challenges faced in keeping school facilities open. Also to Ben McAdam and Stirling Albion TV and his live stream support, helped out by Stirling University students. I don't think anyone would argue that Stirling Albion Football Club has got the best TV company anywhere up to and including the Premiership. Ben does a fantastic job, and without him we'd be a lot poorer in terms of our ability to communicate performances to our supporters, and much wider indeed. I think you just need to take a look at the number of views that our match highlights in particular get, and you'll recognise just what a fantastic service Ben and his guys deliver. And finally, but certainly not least, my fellow club board colleagues, who've been a pillar of strength. We've all supported each other through these tough times, and there's a bit to go yet. So thank you to them, thank you to everyone I've already mentioned, and all I can do is wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, although it'll be a very different Christmas, and my prayers and thoughts go out to everyone that in 2021 we can begin to see a beginning to the new normal.